Hey there! Before we dive into today's story, remember to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you want to join me on this amazing language learning journey. Click the notification bell too, so you won't miss any of our future lessons and stories. Also, I'd love to hear about your own English learning experiences in the comments below. Now, let me share with you a story that changed my life forever. Hi, I'm Sophia Johnson, and I want to share a story that changed my life forever. A story about learning English and discovering that sometimes our biggest challenges can become our greatest gifts. But let me start from the beginning. I still remember the crisp autumn morning when my family and I arrived in Boston. The year was 2005, and I was just 8 years old, clutching my favorite stuffed bear as we stepped off the plane from Mexico. The air felt different here, cooler, sharper, and the sounds around me were a blur of unfamiliar words and phrases that seemed to dance just beyond my understanding. My father had received a job offer at a local hospital, an opportunity that promised a better future for our family. My mother, always the optimist, kept telling me, "Sophia, mi amor, this is our new beginning." But as I looked around the bustling airport, watching people rush by speaking a language I couldn't understand, that new beginning felt more overwhelming than exciting. Our first week in Boston was a whirlwind of discoveries. Everything seemed bigger, faster, and more colorful than back home in Mexico City. The tall buildings reached toward the sky like giant metal trees, and the streets were filled with people bundled up in coats, something I'd rarely seen back home. I remember pressing my face against the window of our new apartment, watching yellow school buses roll by, and wondering what American schools would be like. That's when the reality hit me. I was going to start school here, in America, in English. The thought made my stomach twist into knots. Back in Mexico, I was known as the chatty girl who always had her hand up in class. But how could I be that same Sophia when I couldn't even say hello properly? The night before my first day of school, I sat on my new bed, surrounded by unpacked boxes, practicing the few English words I knew. Hello, thank you, please. My mother found me there, mumbling these words over and over. She sat beside me and said something I'll never forget. Language is like music, mi cielo. Even if you don't understand all the words, you can feel their meaning in your heart. Little did I know then that those words would become my guiding light, not just for my own journey in learning English, but in helping others find their voice in a new language too. The morning of my first day at Brighton Elementary School arrived too quickly. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, wearing a new blue dress my mother had bought for this special occasion, trying to remember all the English words I'd practiced. The reflection staring back at me looked more scared than I wanted to admit. Walking through the school's entrance felt like stepping into another world. The hallways buzzed with chatter and laughter, but to me it was just a symphony of mysterious sounds. My father squeezed my hand reassuringly as we made our way to the principal's office, where we met Mrs. Thompson, my new third-grade teacher. Mrs. Thompson had kind eyes and a warm smile that somehow made me feel a little less nervous. She bent down to my level and spoke slowly. "Welcome to our class, Sophia." I recognized those words from my practice sessions and managed a shy "thank you" in response. My father gave me a quick hug before leaving, and suddenly, I was alone in this new reality. The classroom was bright and colorful, with alphabet charts and number posters covering the walls. 20 pairs of curious eyes followed me as Mrs. Thompson introduced me to the class. I heard my name mentioned, followed by words I didn't understand, and then saw children smiling and waving. I waved back, my hand trembling slightly. The morning lessons were a blur. I sat at my desk, trying desperately to follow along as my classmates read from their books and answered questions. Mrs. Thompson would occasionally stop by my desk, pointing to pictures in my textbook and saying words slowly, but it felt like trying to catch raindrops with my hands. The words kept slipping away before I could grasp them. When lunchtime came, the real challenge began. The cafeteria was a chaos of sounds, smells, and movement. I stood in line clutching my lunch bag, watching other kids chat and laugh with their friends. Finding an empty table, I sat alone, carefully unpacking the lunch my mother had prepared. A torta with my favorite filling, just like I used to eat at school in Mexico. As I sat there, picking at my food and feeling more alone than I ever had, I didn't know that the next few minutes would change everything. I couldn't have guessed that sometimes the best friendships start with a simple gesture, or that my biggest challenge was about to become my greatest adventure. I was still staring at my half-eaten torta when I heard a cheerful voice beside me. "Hi, I'm Emily. Do you want to sit with us?" A girl with bright red hair and freckles stood there, pointing to a table where several other students were eating and laughing. Her smile was so genuine that it made my nervousness fade just a little. "No speak English," I managed to say, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. But Emily's smile didn't falter. Instead, she did something unexpected. She mimed eating and pointed to her table again, then held out her hand. In that moment, I realized that sometimes the most important conversations don't need words at all. Taking my lunch, I followed her to her table. Emily introduced me to her friends. Or at least, that's what I assumed she was doing as she pointed to each person and said their names: Katie, Michael, and Sarah. They all smiled and waved, and Michael even offered me some of his cookies. For the first time that day, I felt a tiny spark of belonging. After lunch, Emily stayed by my side as we headed to the playground. She showed me her favorite swing set, and soon we were swinging side by side. The rhythmic motion felt familiar and comforting, like a dance we both knew the steps to. As we swung higher and higher, Emily started counting. 1, 2, 3. At first, I just listened, but after a few rounds, I found myself counting along with her. Each number felt like a small victory. The playground became our classroom. Emily would point to things and say their names in English: tree, cloud, bird. I would repeat after her, and sometimes share the Spanish words too: árbol, nube, pájaro. She'd try to pronounce them, often getting them hilariously wrong, and we'd both burst into giggles. Through our laughter, I discovered that making mistakes wasn't so scary after all. Days turned into weeks, and Emily and I developed our own special way of communicating. She'd use a mix of gestures, simple words, and drawings to help me understand. During class, she'd quietly whisper translations of Mrs. Thompson's instructions, and in return, I'd teach her Spanish words during recess. Our friendship became a bridge between two languages, two cultures. One day, about a month after we met, I surprised myself by forming my first complete English sentence without thinking. Emily had fallen during a game of hopscotch, and I rushed to her side saying, "Are you okay?" The words just came out naturally. Emily looked up at me with wide eyes and a huge grin, more excited about my English than her scraped knee. That small moment marked a turning point in my journey. Through Emily's friendship, English was becoming more than just a scary foreign language. It was becoming a way to show care, to share jokes, to build connections. She taught me that learning a language isn't just about memorizing words and rules. It's about finding the courage to use those words to reach out to others. As I write this now, I can't help but smile thinking about those playground English lessons. Emily never saw herself as a teacher, but she taught me something invaluable. The best way to learn is through friendship, laughter, and the willingness to try, even if you might make mistakes along the way. With Emily's friendship giving me confidence, I began to explore new ways to learn English beyond our playground sessions. It started one afternoon, when Emily invited me to her house for a homework session. As we sat in her living room, the TV played in the background, some cartoon called SpongeBob SquarePants. I found myself drawn to the silly yellow character's exaggerated expressions and simple phrases. "You like SpongeBob?" Emily asked, noticing my interest. When I nodded, she jumped up excitedly and pulled out a stack of DVDs. That afternoon marked the beginning of our after-school routine, watching cartoons together, with Emily patiently explaining words I didn't understand. Soon, I was picking up phrases like, "I'm ready," and "best day ever." SpongeBob's catchphrases became my first steps into casual English conversation. Music became another unexpected teacher. Emily's older sister was obsessed with Taylor Swift, and soon the catchy tunes found their way into our study sessions. I would write down lyrics, and Emily would help me understand their meaning. Love Story became our favorite. We'd dramatically act out the Romeo and Juliet story in her backyard, singing at the top of our lungs. Those song lyrics stuck in my head better than any vocabulary list ever could. At home, I started creating my own learning tools. I placed sticky notes everywhere, on my bedroom mirror, the refrigerator, even the bathroom door, labeling everything in English. My parents, encouraged by my enthusiasm, joined in. Dad would only ask for things at dinner using English words, even if his pronunciation made us all laugh. Mom started buying English magazines, and we'd flip through them together, making up stories about the pictures we saw. The breakthrough moment came during my 3rd month at school. Mrs. Thompson had assigned the class to write a short story about our favorite animal. Instead of freezing up with fear as I would have before, I embraced the challenge. I wrote about a talking cat who helped other animals learn different languages. The story was full of mistakes, but for the first time, I didn't care. When I read it aloud to the class, my voice shook only a little, and the proud smile on Emily's face gave me all the courage I needed. What I was discovering went beyond just learning a language. Each new word mastered, each sentence successfully formed, felt like adding a new color to my world. The fear of making mistakes was slowly being replaced by the excitement of trying something new. English was becoming more than just a subject to study. It was becoming a tool to express myself, to share my thoughts, to dream in new ways. The years that followed were like watching a garden grow, slow but steady progress, with occasional growth spurts that surprised everyone, including myself. By 6th grade, my English had improved so much that new students often couldn't tell it wasn't my first language. Emily and I were still inseparable, but now our conversations flowed effortlessly between English and Spanish, creating our own special blend of both worlds. Middle school brought new challenges and opportunities. I joined the school newspaper, where my unique perspective as a bilingual student became an asset. I started writing articles about cultural diversity and the immigrant experience, sharing stories that helped other international students feel less alone. My English teachers began to notice something special in my writing, the way I could bridge two cultures through words. It was during my 8th grade year that I had an experience that would shape my future. Our English teacher asked me to help a new student from Venezuela who was struggling with the language. As I sat with Carmen during lunch breaks, teaching her the same way Emily had taught me, through games, songs, and patience, I felt a spark of excitement I'd never experienced before. Watching Carmen's face light up when she understood a new phrase reminded me of my own journey. That's when I knew. The same feeling I got helping Carmen was what Emily must have felt helping me all those years ago. The joy of watching someone break through the language barrier, of being there for their aha moments, was incredible. I started volunteering as a peer tutor, working with other ESL students. Each time I helped someone understand a difficult English phrase or pronounce a tricky word, I felt like I was paying forward what Emily had given me. By the time I entered high school, my dream was clear. I wanted to become an English teacher, but not just any teacher. I wanted to specialize in teaching English to international students. I wanted to be for others what Mrs. Thompson and Emily had been for me, a guide, a friend, and a bridge to a new world of possibilities. My college years at Boston University's School of Education were transformative. I dove deep into language acquisition theories, but what made me stand out was my personal experience. While other students learned about ESL teaching methods from textbooks, I could share real stories about what worked and what didn't from both sides of the learning journey. During my junior year, I got an internship at my old elementary school. Yes, the very same Brighton Elementary where my journey began. Walking through those familiar hallways, now as a teaching assistant, brought back a flood of memories. Mrs. Thompson had retired, but her classroom still had the same warm, welcoming feeling. I even found some of her old vocabulary posters tucked away in a cabinet, the corners worn from years of use. My first real teaching experience came in a summer program for immigrant children. Standing in front of my own classroom, I saw myself in every nervous face, every hesitant hand raise, every confused expression. I remembered how it felt to be in their shoes, and I knew exactly what they needed. Not just grammar rules and vocabulary lists, but confidence, patience, and understanding. I started developing my own teaching method, combining traditional techniques with the creative approaches that had helped me learn. Instead of rigid lesson plans, I created interactive storytelling sessions. I brought music into the classroom, just like those Taylor Swift study sessions with Emily. I encouraged students to label things in their homes with sticky notes, share their favorite movies, and most importantly, to not be afraid of making mistakes. What surprised me most was how much I was still learning. Each student brought their own unique perspective and learning style, forcing me to adapt and grow as a teacher. Some students learned better through movement, others through music, and still others through visual aids. I discovered that being a good teacher wasn't about having all the answers. It was about helping students find their own path to understanding. By the time I graduated, I had already developed a reputation for my innovative teaching methods. My professors encouraged me to document my approach, seeing how it differed from traditional ESL instruction. What had started as personal experience was evolving into something bigger. A new way of teaching English that honored both the language and the learner's journey. What people now call the Sophia method wasn't something I deliberately set out to create. It evolved naturally from my own experience and the countless interactions with my students. At its core, it's based on a simple truth I learned from Emily years ago. Learning a language is about making connections, not memorizing rules. My classroom looks different from traditional ESL settings. Instead of rows of desks facing a whiteboard, we have comfortable reading corners, a small stage for role-playing, and walls covered with student-created content. Technology plays a big role. We use tablets for interactive storytelling, video chat with native English speakers, and create digital language journals. But the real magic happens in the personal connections we build. Take Maria, one of my first students. She arrived from Guatemala last year, as scared as I had been on my first day. Following my own experience, I paired her with Sarah, a native English speaker who reminded me of Emily. But instead of leaving it to chance, I structured their interactions. They started a shared blog where they posted photos and described their daily lives. Sarah in English, Maria in both Spanish and English. Within months, Maria's confidence soared, and Sarah gained a new perspective on her own language. Another success story is Jin from South Korea. He struggled with English pronunciation, becoming so frustrated that he barely spoke. Remember how SpongeBob helped me? I encouraged Jin to choose his own favorite English language show. He picked The Great British Bake Off, and we used it as a learning tool. Soon, he was confidently explaining baking terms in English, and even started a cooking club where students taught each other recipes in their target language. The method has 5 key principles, each drawn from my personal journey. First, emotional safety. First, creating an environment where mistakes are celebrated as learning opportunities, just as Emily did for me. We have a weekly favorite mistakes session where students share their most interesting language mix-ups and what they learned from them. Second, cultural bridge building, using students' own cultures as launching pads for English learning. We celebrate holidays from all our students' countries, learning the relevant English vocabulary through authentic experiences. Third, real-world integration, connecting English learning to students' actual lives. Like my childhood sticky notes, students create their own personal dictionaries based on the things they interact with daily. Fourth, creative expression, using art, music, drama, and technology to make language learning multidimensional. Our annual Language Arts Festival showcases students' projects where they tell stories through multiple mediums. Finally, community connection, involving families and the broader community in the learning process. We host monthly language exchange evenings where parents, students, and community members share their languages and cultures. The results have been remarkable. Our students typically achieve functional fluency twice as fast as traditional ESL programs. But more importantly, they develop a genuine love for language learning. Last year, our program was recognized by the Massachusetts Board of Education as a model for innovative ESL instruction. What makes me proudest, though, isn't the recognition or the statistics. It's the moments when I see a student's eyes light up with understanding, just as mine did years ago on that playground with Emily. Or when I hear former students tell me they're now helping others learn English, continuing the cycle of empathy and support that Mrs. Thompson and Emily started with me. Looking back on my journey from that scared 8-year-old girl to where I am today, I'm struck by how life has a way of coming full circle. Last week, Emily, yes, the same Emily who changed my life on that playground, visited my classroom. Now a successful pediatrician, she still has that same warm smile that made me feel welcome 2 decades ago. As we watched my students engage in their language exchange activities, she turned to me and said, "You've created something beautiful here, Sophia." And she's right, but not in the way most people think. What we've created isn't just a method for teaching English. It's a community of learners who understand that language is about connection, not perfection. Every day, I see new friendships forming across cultural boundaries, just like mine and Emily's did. I see students helping each other, celebrating small victories, and building confidence through compassion. The future of English language learning is evolving rapidly. Technology is opening up new possibilities we couldn't have imagined when I was learning. Virtual reality can now transport students to English-speaking environments from anywhere in the world. AI language assistants can provide instant feedback and personalized practice. But amid all these advances, I still believe the human connection remains the heart of language learning. My dream for the future is to make this approach accessible to more students worldwide. We're developing an online platform that combines our methodology with digital tools, allowing teachers to implement these principles in their own classrooms. Several schools across the country have already adopted elements of our program, each adapting it to their unique community needs. To every student struggling with English now, I want to say this. Your accent is beautiful. It's the sound of courage. Your mistakes are valuable. They're the steps of progress. Your journey is unique. It's the path to finding your voice in a new language. Remember, every fluent English speaker you meet was once a beginner too. As for me, I still put sticky notes around my house, but now they're in the languages my students are teaching me. I still sing along to Taylor Swift, much to my students' amusement, and yes, I still occasionally watch SpongeBob. Because perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is that we never really stop being students ourselves. We just keep finding new ways to grow, connect, and share our stories with the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for more stories in English and lessons. Click the bell icon to be notified when we post new videos. Your support means a lot to us. See you next time.